I'm going to finally become a bee. I dropped the B from my name so that I could become a bee in real life.
All that talk of the Black Eyed Peas recently, Chase is like, I am a bee. You're right.
I am a bee. I think that as a society, we should normalize the hip hip hooray again.
Yeah.
Or something like it.
Uh-huh.
There's not a lot of like call and response sort of celebrations in that way, you know?
Yeah, what is the closest thing that we have right now?
It's not much. I feel like a lot of it's like sports centered, right? Like you
It
just
is sports
like
centered, yeah.
Yeah, you got to say something with like the Sacramento Mountain Lions will be like Lions up, and then everybody in the crowd says rah or something like that. But
like how people from Atlanta, they say peace up, and then everyone else says A-Town down.
Right, yeah.
Or how the Kings, they have a player, Keegan Murray, and then when he makes a basket, the PA says Keegan, and all the fans say Murray.
Right,
Pretty
yeah.
good.
I think we need that, but for just like everyday celebrations, you know?
Okay.
Because I would love to bust out a hip hip hooray when like I like parallel park or something, you know? Like I would love to get like a crowd of people around me. Just like, give me one hip hip hooray, you know?
So are you saying that you're going to say hip hip for
And then
yourself,
everybody
and
else
then you want other people to hooray you?
I would like others to hooray me. Yeah.
So just anyone can yell hip hip, and then everyone else around there is obligated to just shout hooray, just anywhere into the void.
I think what I'm describing is not obligation. I want to create a environment where the hooray is something that we're good with again. I know that it's like a very goofy and cheesy thing to have done in the past, but I think like if we just create the right environment, we could bring hip hip hooray or similar. I don't need it to be hip hip hooray.
Okay.
You know?
I see. I mean, I see what you're saying. You want a more not cohesive or collaborative, but more supportive society. You want strangers to be supporting each other on the street. Like, hey,
vocally.
I just parallel parked. Hip hip
hooray. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should be able to do that.
Yeah. I don't think anything is stopping you from yelling hip hip to yourself.
Social stigma.
I don't
mostly.
know if you're going to get many hoorays at first.
Yeah. You have to be the change that you want to see in the world.
I was about to say, it starts with one person, Chase.
Even the mightiest of mountains can be brought down by a single drop of water. And that's me, the drop of water, trying to say hip hip hooray into a crowd of people.
Mm-hmm.
I bet I could get one hooray from like a crowd of people.
Yeah. I mean,
welcome to Video Game Podtimism. It's the Optimist video game variety show where two best friends talk about the wonderful world of gaming. I saw the 3-minute marker and I'm like, we gotta do something. My name is Chase,
and my name is David. And let me just give Chase. You can hip yourself for that very good opening bit if you want.
Oh, okay. I'm actually gonna save it and I'll just drop it somewhere in here.
Oh,
I want to keep you on your toes so that we can sort of create the correct environment. You know,
I'm gonna get hoorazy for you.
Quick, right at the top here, programming note.
Yeah.
This episode is coming out. Let me see. I think our time on the 14th. I will be in Japan for 2 weeks, and so we're going to take 2 weeks off from the show. Mm-hmm. So on the 14th or 15th, depending on your time zone, will be this episode, and then 2 weeks after that is going to be the one following that. So the 21st and the 28th, you will not get an episode. And then the 5th is when you will get your next one. So, we were trying to like, should we just like slam out 3 episodes like back to back this week? And we're like, you know what? That's probably going to come out in the wash. Like by the 3rd one, we'll be like, I don't know, dude, Mario's good at the jumping. What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
And like, you know, we were making episodes for a while. So like, why not take just like a quick fortnight, you know?
Yeah. It's just going to make us extra juicy for when we come back.
Yeah, I'm going to have so many video games to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I got long flights ahead of me, so like I'm going to play some shit. There's a good chance it's Bollatro for 6 hours and then like sleep and then play something on the play date, but you know.
Chase is going to find the arcade version of Bollatro, which is where you actually just use regular cards on a table.
It's just a guy in the streets of Shinjuku who's like, I don't know, this one's going to give you a multiplier of 2. I'm like, yeah, dude. All right, tag me in.
Tag me in, buddy.
Anyway, so just wanted to say that at the top so nobody's surprised next week when you don't have Podtimism in your feed. But we'll be back on the 5th, so not too long from now. Anyway.
Hey. What's up?
Have you been playing video games, David?
I have. It's mostly just been Resident Evil 4.
Sure, yeah.
It has pretty much consumed all of my video game playing time.
It's understandable.
Yeah, at this point, I wouldn't say there's much else to say about the game except that it is good. It shoots good. It feels good to move. The pacing is great. The characters are a lot better. Ada's in it now. Ada is fun. You know, she's
very fun.
She's a very interesting character. They've definitely toned down the femme fatale-ness of her voice, because I watched old videos of her in 4. I'm just like, man, that is one corny voice.
A lot. Yeah.
She feels, once again, more grounded, more like a real character. And I enjoy her and Leon's relationship, especially after, you know, having played the second one now and seeing how it started.
Right, yeah.
Leon just has absolutely no time for her. He is not impressed. He's not interested. He's just like, why are you here? Leave me alone. He's the scorned lover, truly.
Yeah.
But it's just a fun game. It's amazing how they have recreated this game to make it feel new. I've said that many times before, but it just continually impresses me, and I'm really looking forward to beating it. Probably most definitely by the next time that we talk, this game will be in the rear view for me.
Yeah. Where are you in it right now?
I am getting close to being done with the castle. I was out of town this last weekend, so I didn't play as much as I would have. So yeah, I haven't made too much progress since the last time we talked, but I'm making my way through the castle. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good game.
It's very good. That section also like got lengthened quite a bit, I feel like, since the 4th or the like base version of the game.
Yeah, I like the little bit of backtracking that they give to these levels in the remake, where you can go back and find all the different treasures and stuff. And it really is quite beneficial to go back and get all the treasures and access all the places you couldn't get to before with whatever special key there is in this level, or now you have Ashley, so you can like shove her over a wall and hope nothing eats her on the other side, and she opens a door for you, and it's great because there's a golden chalice there that you can fit some gems into. Gives you a 1.4 gem trio same color, or gem quadruple same color bonus. Feels good, man.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, it's just a great game. Not even like for a remake. It's just this game I feel is one of the first remakes that really stands on its own for me. As I mean, probably 2 and 3 do as well, but I didn't play those ones to begin with, so I can't really speak to that in comparison. But this one I really feel like I can, because this was, like I said, one of the games I played the most when it came out, and just when I was in high school, I think I just played the hell out of this game. So yeah, it's amazing. It's really good. It's gonna be the definite way that I judge any remake going forward, which I think might be somewhat of a problem, because I don't think a lot of developers are going to put this much care into remaking a game. But if you're going to do it, at least you got to do it this way for me to like actually really think that this is something worth being remade.
Yeah, it's like you have two sort of methods right now of like the Final Fantasy VII remake route, where it is definitely redoing shit, but it is also like building on what that game was in the first place. Like there's a lot of shit that is definitely new. And so it's sort of like engaging with the base lore, but also sort of like engaging with the idea of a remake in the first place.
Sure.
Or it is like Resident Evil 4, where it's like, this is just a pristine version of the base game, and they have maybe modified some shit that like, you know, does or doesn't make sense now. I think I've said this before, but it's like so kind of miraculous how it feels like they haven't changed that much, but it is sort of dramatic if you actually compare them 1-to-1 of what has actually changed.
Yeah.
Just the inclusion of like the parry with the knife is like, that is absolutely a thing that feels like it's in 2024. It's like almost like, you know, kind of influenced by the third person RPG influence of the last 10 years of like Dark Souls and, you know, God of War and shit like that. But it doesn't feel out of place somehow.
No.
Which is, it's just amazing.
And yeah, they went back and said, hey, you stole the over the camera third person mode from us for all these games. So we're going to take a little bit back. But honestly, the most amazing thing about the game is that they took how I remembered Resident Evil 4 in my mind and then made that game.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the most amazing thing. They took what was my mind's eye of this game with rosy nostalgic glasses and recreated it what I thought it was like when I played it the first time. It's just incredible. It really is great.
It's wild.
That's all I got. That's it for this week. It's just been Resident Evil 4. That's it. It's been a slow gaming week for me.
All right, that's okay. No, you ain't got no gaming requirements.
Hey, I ain't apologizing. I'm just stating. All right.
Cool. Get off my back, Dad.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's I feel like this year I can see shapes of your game of the other year list being formed already. Yeah, because you do your goatee with like
games I played this year. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, that like haven't released this year, but was the first time you played them. Like it's gonna. I feel like Resident Evil 4 is a tough one to top.
That one is it's really good. It's really good. I'm having a great time with it.
Sure.
Anyways, Chase, what have you been playing?
I got a couple things. So like. Nothing that I really have new to say about these games, but I did want to mention that I'm still playing them. I'm really still enjoying Dragon's Dogma 2, playing a lot of it, and it just continues to kind of get better the more I put into it.
Man, I want to touch this game.
I know, you really should. I think you would like it a lot.
Yeah.
It's really, really incredible in so many ways, and so I'm enjoying it a lot, but don't have, anything else wild to say. I think I probably will by the time I beat it, but that might also be like just rife with spoilers. So
sure.
Who knows? But so I've been playing that. I also like had a vacuum in a Persona sized vacuum in my life after I beat 3.
Sure.
And I was looking at like, what could I blow a whole flight on just like playing a game? And I sure could blow a flight playing either Persona 4 or 5. So I started both on the Switch and am replaying through those. I played through 4 more recently than I played through 5. But they both feel still fairly recent as far as like my actual enjoyment of them. But I feel like I'm sort of drifting towards 5 at this point. And I think that's mostly because I've played the other ones. I see the sort of like structure of those games a lot more clearly than I could the first time I played Persona 5. Like it felt like kind of nothing else when I played it the first time, just because I wasn't really that familiar with like life sim games.
Sure.
Whereas now it's like, okay, I've like got a little bit more exposure to these, and I've obviously played this before, so I kind of know what's coming. But it is really interesting to see like just how long Persona 5 takes to get into the loop of the game. Like Persona 3 throws you in almost immediately with like, okay, you are doing the life sim stuff on like day 2 or 3, whereas like Persona 5, I'm 4 or 5 hours into it and we're still just like kind of doing the intro, Yeah. I haven't had a like, all right, I'm just going to walk home and do whatever I want now moment at all, which is like for me kind of the core of those games. So it's definitely taking a long time, but like everything else about it is so good that I'm not complaining about that at all. Like obviously I love the cast of 5, and just the level of polish that game has is really just unbelievable. So I got no problems replaying through it. So
great.
I may play more of that on my trip, but that will more of Persona 5 will also mean like 10 more hours, and I'll be like, hey, I got the second character or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. I'm just really enjoying it. I was thinking about picking up Persona Q and Q2, which is a game for the 3DS as well. So maybe more on that soon.
Persona Q.
Yeah, it's like a mobile Persona game that's like it's like a what if or like a side story almost.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah, but the main 2 games that I wanted to talk about, one of them is this game called Lightyear Frontier. This is a game made by Framebreak is the name of the company. It came out in like early access maybe a month ago. It feels like it's been a minute. I've actually been playing this for a while. I just haven't had the moment to like talk about it on the show. But it came out in early access on Game Pass, and I was like, all right, yeah, I'll give it a look. I'd seen it, I think, at like some E3 stuff last year, and just like trailers of it from every now and then. And the pitch of it was essentially like a farming survival game, but you're in a mech most of the time rather than on foot. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. That sounds sick. So I like it's that, right? Like they have certainly delivered that part of the game. And I wouldn't say that like I am totally burnt out on like farming and survival games. I think that loop is still very fun. It is a genre though that is like kind of established at this point, right? Like there are a lot of games in that genre, and I think a lot of indie games in that genre too. Like you see this kind of a lot, and like I don't think I've ever talked about any of them on the show, but like there are definitely varying levels of quality to those kind of games. And so like when looking at these, my brain is usually reaching for like, I need like one extra thing in this game to make it be just a little bit different, right? Because there are just so many games that are doing such similar stuff that I'm like, I it's hard to stand out in this crowd. You know, like when Stardew Valley came out, when was that, like 2015, 2016, something like that? I feel like it was, at least for me, kind of a breath of fresh air because it was so different than the stuff that I was playing. Like I wasn't a big Harvest Moon or like Rune Factory player. And so I wasn't as familiar with what those games were doing. And so, you know, maybe it's part exposure, but also just like there weren't as many games out that were like it. You know, it's definitely both there, but I do think that there were fewer games like that on the market. Mm-hmm. And since then, you've definitely seen more of them, right? I've talked about a lot of those games that are more in line with the farming sim genre. And I like a lot of those, even the ones that are, you know, like I say this not as a negative, but like they're more in line with that genre. They are more like, yeah, we're kind of just sticking with the traditions of this stuff. But I don't know, I sort of like that. It reminds me of certain like music subgenres where you find a lot of like similarities from one band to another, but at the same time, it is a genre that I think just like a lot of devs who are maybe like, I didn't think that I had a place in video games, like either as a developer or a player of games. I didn't think there was a place for me, but I think a lot of these games have shown like, no, there is, right? Like I think a lot of the farming and like life sim games, that there are people who weren't previously interested in games who are enjoying those kind of games. And I think that that's like a net good thing. I think more people playing games is good. I think more people developing games is good. But at the same time, I think you do get like a sort of flattening of the genre the more of these games that come out. Anyway, point being, I'm just usually reaching for like, what is the one extra thing that is present here? And I think for something like Potion Permit, that game that I played, I think it was like maybe a year or two ago, and I liked it a lot. Like that was definitely not a farming game, but like you're making potions and then you go out into the wild and collect goods and bring them back and make more potions to get a better house and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. That whole thing. I like that one a lot just because of the twist on like what you're actually like producing. I like Graveyard Keeper, which is like kind of a similar concept, and you know, any number of games. And with this one, I think there's a couple of things that they're bringing. One, like the mech of it all is very fun. It's very charming. You can get into this just like gigantic, like mech warrior looking mech, and it is big and lumbering and hilarious that you can like apply this to a farming game. There's a bunch of different like attachments that you have for the arm. Some of them are like essentially a big vacuum that lets you like collect stuff. There's a gigantic saw that lets you chop down trees or hit rocks to like get more materials or anything like that. And of course, all of those comes with like certain upgrades that you can apply to the mech that'll either make you hit faster or, break things that you couldn't before or something like that. So all that's like, you know, pretty traditional stuff. But like, I think just the aesthetic choice of making it apply to a big hulking machine is like fun and cool. Yeah. It's like charming. I know that that's like maybe the aesthetics of it are not the deepest thing to appreciate, but like it's fun. That's cool. I think that the game also comes with like, again, I haven't beat it, so I don't know if this like is a bigger part of it eventually, but there is kind of a like ecological sustainability message that happens in this game. Sure. And I think to combine the imagery of this like gigantic machine with sustainability is an interesting one, which is like kind of cool and kind of refreshing. There's like a subgenre of sci-fi. I think it's called like solar punk or something like that. Where it's like, it is a vision of the future that is like energy is sustained in a better way, right? Sure. Like it is sort of the inverse of steampunk or something like that, where, you have a lot of farming done in strange places, but it's done in a sustainable way, or like a lot of solar panels. That's where I think the name kind of comes from and shit like that. And so it's like, it is giving you a vision of the future in a way that I think isn't often applied in sci-fi. Sci-fi oftentimes feels like it is used as a way to engage with current political problems or like current like socio economic or just social problems, or just the state of affairs, right? Like, yeah, The Matrix is about the turn of the century and the internet and like people being online and shit like that. And, you know, being in the quote unquote real world, Neo, all that shit. And so it's being used to like look at current day problems through the lens of like this futuristic place. And so for a sci-fi game to present you with like here is an alternative to how we currently exist technologically. It doesn't have the same effect as like making you think about the current moment in the same way, but it does, I think, offer a certain amount of like soothing capacities. Like it is a soothing future to look at. However possible you think that is, I don't know. Some of this stuff is like, I don't know if this would solve, climate change or anything like that. But yeah, at least for me personally, I think when looking at like climate change and like the climate crisis and shit like that, it's very easy for me to get bogged down in kind of like doomerist thought, Sure. And so to even just to see something that is like, hey, this could be possible, or like a world where we both exist alongside machines and the world is okay, is a kind of nice narrative to see, a kind of nice world to see. Mm-hmm. And at the very least provides like, or something to aim our ship at, Yeah. So for me personally, that stuff like really works. Again, I don't know like what that ends up culminating in the narrative, but I enjoy stuff like this. I think Terra Nil was sort of like this last year, sort of a similar design aesthetic. Yeah. And that one was about like, replenishing a sort of blasted wasteland, not leaving a trace of any of the machinery there, which is like cool. Nice. Mm-hmm. You and I both went to a like what I describe to people as like a liberal arts elementary school sometimes. And that's like, it's not that, but like it was a very like hippy dippy kind of woo woo place sometimes. Yep. And like, I appreciate that. That's fine. Great. I think a lot of what they taught there was like a certain amount of sustainability. And so like the take only memories, leave only footprint stuff is definitely appealing to that part of my brain. Mm-hmm. So like all of that really works. I think just like visually the design is like very fun, and they're like just the color grading of the video game is very nice. It's pretty bright without being like cell shaded or anything like that, but it's not engaging with the sort of like dark world that some of the survival games do. You definitely see it more with like the farming genre. Usually the art aesthetic is like pretty bright to begin with, but this one, it's in 3D and like you're in first person a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And so it's cool to see that aesthetic applied here. Yeah, I don't think this one, for me at least, is like breaking my brain as far as like how good it is or anything like that. Yeah. Anything like that. But I am still really enjoying it. I think it's a good time. It's a good time. That loop that farming games do is appealing to me, and I can do it a lot of times. I don't know if it's just because the genre is still like fairly novel, despite the fact like we're closing in on like 10 years of Stardew being out and like that being like a thing, But I still enjoy the like just set up a basic farm, do some shit around the world, unlock cooler shit and rinse, repeat, and get some dopamine hits in your brain. But I think this one has like enough new stuff there that I'm like, I'm in, like I'm here for this. Nice. And I think so far as I can tell, it's not super long. Mm-hmm. And so I am okay with that. I think like when you start lengthening these games artificially is when it does kind of start to drag a little bit. If you just have 6 loops of the unlock a cool new area, get a cool new tech, and like you're able to do new shit, that's fine. Like just make it that way. It doesn't need to be Stardew Valley length, which is like, meant to be played for like 100 hours or something like that. Yeah, it's okay if it's 6, right? Like that's a totally valid amount of time. And I think that like trying to, as the genre goes on, this like farming genre goes on, definitely going to be more interested in the games that are trying different shit. And I think length is a thing that you can toy with and have it be an interesting question, right? Of like, what does Stardew Valley look like if you can only play it for 6 hours or even like 1 hour, like what is the roguelike farming game? What is that? And so, yeah, like I think I'm not at the end of enjoying this genre, but I think my brain is definitely reaching for, where's the creativity and the interesting new thing. Yeah. With this. And I think that Lightyear Frontier has enough of that for me to be like, yeah, I'm definitely going to keep playing this. I like mechs. That's cool. And the solar punk of it all is really working for me. So I'm definitely around for this one. Mm-hmm. But I am interested to see like where this genre goes and like what sort of the next big swing is with this stuff. And I'm not going to call myself like an expert. There might be something out currently that would break my brain if I played it. But I'm sort of like reaching for like, what's next? What are we doing here with this? Just because I think, again, there's so much talent in the pool. There's so many people who are engaged with this and attempting new things and developing new games that I want to see like where's the new swing that'll kind of break the genre and do something really cool.
Yeah, where's the inscription of farming sims?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Because it's out there. Somebody's making it. And that's not to dig on this game and say that like this isn't it, but it is, this is more traditional, but still also very good. So
yeah,
it's on Game Pass. So if any of that sounds interesting, it's worth like at least checking out the first like hour or so, because you'll know.
Yeah, I'm looking at photos of this game. I love hitting a tree with some laser beams to cut it down. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. You have like a hose on your mech arms to water your plants instead of like missile launchers.
Yes,
that's a fun aesthetic. I enjoy that. It looks peaceful.
Yeah, I think that just that design choice alone is saying something, like to replace what is normally housed like with guns and stuff.
Yeah.
And missiles, to replace that with like a watering can is an interesting choice. And I think there is a thematic connection there just in that decision. So I like that. I think that's very neat.
It's a nice looking cockpit too.
Yeah, the interiors are very fun. You can also like customize that stuff. So there's like different like chassis you can apply to your mech and stuff. So they definitely have the like the mech obsessed player in mind.
Sure.
In this game, like it's not just like standard issue stuff. You can definitely mess with it and change different stuff out and apply a different coat of paint and all that stuff. So it's cool.
Does this feel more like a Stardew Valley or like a Farming Simulator 2020 or whatever we played?
I mean, like on the scale of like the actual farming sim game, it's definitely closer to Stardew. Like it is simplified in a lot of ways. This isn't just like, the most technically dense video game. So yeah, it's definitely farther on that scale.
Gotcha. And what's up with these birds? These weird birds?
Yeah, that is kind of another thing, that there are these like animals that are present in the world that you're in. You essentially like crash land here in the beginning of the game. Again, I don't exactly know what's going on, just because like the story is sort of sparse with how much it's doling out to you in any given time. But I think supposedly you are trying to find like a new place for human life to work.
Sure.
And there's all this wildlife here that just sort of exists ambiently around you. You're not really like hunting them for food or anything. They're just there. But you can usually feed these animals like in their nests and stuff like that. And so you get like points, which will like rejuvenate the wildlife around you faster. Which is cool. I think that like, again, I don't think that that's necessarily how that tracks onto real life. Like I don't feed a bird and then my tree grows faster in real life. But I think it's speaking to just like how an ecosystem is connected to itself.
Feeds off of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Where like if you are able to nourish one part of the ecosystem, it will nourish other parts in turn.
I watched Biggest Little Farm.
I went to our elementary school. I remember those things that they told us about the web. There's a web in the metaphor.
Whatever it is, the ecosystem of life. The web ecosystem.
Yeah, I guess maybe I don't remember that.
And they made us hold the web, and I was like grass, and I let go. They made me let go, and a bunch of other people fell. It was very terrifying.
Honestly, yeah, pretty frightening exercise now that I'm saying this out loud.
I'm grass. I'm dead now, and now deer and squirrels are also dead.
Yeah.
Dang.
Like I don't know if that's exactly how it works, but like I see your point as an adult, but as a kid, I was like, damn, dude, we just lose frogs and then like my dad explodes or something. Like, I don't get it.
He doesn't just die. He explodes. The frogs are the only things keeping us from exploding.
He just combusts. Honestly, I think that there would be some people that combust if frogs just suddenly like blipped out of existence.
I mean, it would be very confusing if one day you just wake up, there's no frogs anywhere.
We got no more. We're fresh out. Frog of the week would certainly have a hard time.
Oh, that's the real biggest impact there.
Yeah, true. Fun game. I'm enjoying it. The other game, and the other one that I really want to talk about today, is a game called Dead Island 2, David.
A game called Dead Island 2.
Yeah, whoa. So for anybody who like maybe isn't super familiar with this series or like this game, I feel like it was kind of infamous for a moment, like a brief period of time.
That people loved the trailer for the first game.
Yeah, the trailer for the first one was like kind of a big deal. I think that was like, I every time I think about it, I'm like, when was that? It's really hard for me to place, but
it was the peak of the zombie fad.
Yeah, it was big time into the zombie thing. Yeah, so the first one launched in 2011.
Yeah.
And I think the announcement trailer was like a couple years prior to that, which like just doesn't make any sense. For whatever reason, I'm like, I didn't see that in high school, right? But like that would have had to have, that'd have had to have made sense.
Yes, again.
Yeah, there is, so like essentially there is this like kind of like high quality cinematic trailer that they put out for the first one that a lot of people like, it was kind of infamous because it was like sort of violent and there was like violence towards like a kid in it, which was like sort of brutal. Mm-hmm. But I think at the time there was sort of this like bubbling desire for more like intense media like that, you know, like this was right around the time that like The Walking Dead was popping off and like you also had like Game of Thrones starting to bubble as well. And so I think there was a desire for this sort of like not grimdark, but more intense version of these shows and video games. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it was also very popular at the moment. Like a lot of people were like, yeah, this is the shit. I really like this. It's very cool. And like the game came out and it like wasn't that like the trailer, it was not like the trailer very much. It was like more of an open world first person game that like was pretty goofy in a lot of ways. Like it was very tongue in cheek a lot of the times.
Yeah, it definitely was not in keeping with the very serious kind of brutal tone.
No, absolutely not.
Juxtaposed to very sunny, shiny graphics.
Yeah. And like, I remember enjoying it for sure, but it was definitely sort of one of those, like, it's definitely an okay game, right? Like, I think that there's plenty of stuff that was criticizable about it, but I had a good time at the time. And I think especially at that moment, I was very open to games that just kind of let you put time in and that will allow you to progress, you know? I think in playing Dragon's Dogma 2, it is definitely reinforcing the fact that like the experiences that I'm really satisfied with are ones where it is asking you to learn and apply something cool, right? It's like why I like the Dark Souls games and why I appreciate games like Dragon's Dogma that are like, there's something different going on here and you do kind of need to pay attention, right? Like your progress is only gated by your own patience and your ability to sort of like internalize the lessons that we are trying to teach you. Whereas you definitely saw this wave of games in that era, like 2010, 2011, like the Assassin's Creed games and stuff, where it's like, it's not really that hard. And the stuff that we need you to learn is just like, just keep trying, you know, like, a lot of the times, like it is not particularly difficult. And even if you put it on a harder difficulty, like we're just going to give you less health, right? It's not like you need to necessarily be really, really like professional at the game, although you could get better at it. It's much more that you just kind of need to like have fast reflexes if you want to like be good at it or something. And so I was open to that at the time, right? I enjoyed a lot of those Assassin's Creed games. I enjoyed Dead Island 1. Even to a certain extent, like the good version of that is like Horizon or something, right? Where it is challenging in its own way, but it is more in that mold.
Sure, I see that.
Where the friction is mostly just like keep playing it, keep existing in this place and pushing forward and you will experience the thing that we want you to experience. Or like Uncharted, right? I don't think Uncharted is usually too tough. And the thing they're trying to do is like kind of have you grapple with like, where do I go? What do I climb? How do I get there? But I think I am less interested in that as a genre now. I've played so many of those games. It was definitely a saturation thing at a certain point.
Sure.
I think like the last one that I really liked was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the one that was set in like Greece, where I was like, I just love this world a lot. And I like Cassandra as like a main character. And so I'm sort of okay with the world not being particularly challenging other than just like putting in time.
Yeah.
But that was the last one that I was really like, I tried playing that Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah.
And just like, I think my appetite for it was so much lower than it used to be. Cause like that game, by all intents and purposes, looks really good. I think the mechanics are pretty fun. Like combat feels good, but it just like wasn't grasping me. And that felt like a personal experience rather than like, this game sucks now or something like that. And so playing this game is so bizarre because it definitely feels like, hey, Dead Island came out in 2011 and what feels like it is true is that Dead Island 2 probably came out in 2012, despite the fact that it is now out in 2024.
Why? How long has this game been in development? Why, out of all games, to decide, yes, Dead Island needs a sequel 13 years later?
I think like, so it was in development hell for a long time.
Sure.
It was announced at E3 2014.
Oh my goodness.
Is like, I know. Yeah. Full, like, so this, I'm saying this as if it came out this year. It came out last year, like almost not to the day, but April of last year. So 9 years between announcing and actually being put out.
Dang.
I think that, so the game company that made the first one, Techland, was originally going to build this one, but they decided like, hey, we're actually going to go out and build Dying Light, which is a different first-person zombie shooter.
Okay, sure.
Which also, like, I have had very similar feelings about that game too.
Yeah, you played that one.
Yeah, I did. I think I played Dying Light 2, which like was interesting for sure. But yeah, so they like were looking for Deep Silver, the publisher, was like, okay, well, who's going to build Dead Island 2? Because like we want to do another one. And then they had like a couple of people working on it, and then they like hired this company called Jaeger Development that built it for a few years, and then Deep Silver was like, actually no, never mind, we're not gonna go with you anymore, and dropped that developer. In 2016, a company called Sumo Digital took it over, and then in 2018 they said, just kidding, not them either. And then eventually in 2019, THQ Nordic announced that the development of the game had changed hands to Dambuster Studios, which is who ends up building the rest of it. Which is an internal studio to Deep Silver. And so like, I think any game that has that long of a development cycle is something weird is going to be in there, you know?
Yeah.
And that is really true with this game. Like, I don't think it is bad, but there's just so much strange stuff happening in it. I like the intro specifically is like uncanny. I have no idea how to describe it. It's like, I think at a certain point, the game was maybe intended to be much more of a Left 4 Dead style game, because they introduce like 8 characters like all at once. And then they have you pick one based on like really nothing. Like you get like a character intro and all of the performances are just like baffling. People are saying stuff to each other. Like, none of this seems human at all, which is sort of campy unto itself. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I'm okay with that. It's bizarre and like feels like it's in Oblivion video game. So that's cool. And then they have you pick one, and then like you're stuck with that character for the rest of the game. Like you can't switch them at any point, which feels like a very big commitment for having seen like 3 minutes of cutscene in the beginning, and then you just like pick one. That's all very bizarre. The combat is very much the same thing as the first one, which is like first person fighting. Essentially, it's like kind of, if you've played Skyrim, you've probably played. It
seems like Skyrim almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Weird Skyrim.
Like there's slightly more complications to it. Like there's more stuff in it than just, you know, swinging a sword, but it's not that much more, you know? I think a lot of the complexity comes from the fact that there are so many different weapons, then you can sort of like tinker with them and, you know, go to a workbench and upgrade stuff, which feels exceptionally of that era. Yeah. You know, like it's very Left 4 Dead. It's, or not Left 4 Dead, Last of Us. And shit like that, which like, I feel like at the time Last of Us was like, that's sort of not the gold standard, but that's like, okay, this is good. We figured out what like a good workbench feels like over the course of like a full game. But again, it's very strange. It feels like a Far Cry game in that way. And so like, not bad, but just sort of, it's stepped out of time. And I'm like playing one of these games again. I think that, so I guess to like back up just a little bit, what's going on in this game? Dead Island 1 is like, I think it takes place in Hawaii or something like that. It's on an island, and you got zombies now, which is no good.
Got the zombies.
You got them zombies. I got a bad case of the zombies. And in this one, so I think it's like 15 years after the fact, that you're now like in LA, which has, you know, caught the zombie outbreak, right? And yeah, so it like largely takes place in these like open zones, essentially. Like you have like little parts of LA that you can explore around. So like you start in like Beverly Hills, I think, and you know you're kind of wandering around different parts of LA to do different stuff, which like as an approach I think is fine. I definitely don't need this game to be gigantic, and in fact I kind of prefer the opposite, where it is like sort of dense rather than wide, which is good. I think that that's like a good thing, because you have like, you know, in the Beverly Hills area, it's like you're wandering through like 8 different houses or something like that, and each one is very, you know, dense in the way that it has like information and loot and shit like that. There's a podcaster house, which I thought was very funny.
Were we in there?
Yeah, you and me made a cameo, which was pretty sick, and especially cool since this game has been in development since 2014. They knew
we were going to be podcasters.
Yeah, like, hey, these dudes are cooking already. I overheard some 20-year-old boys in Sacramento talking about video games. We need to make a whole thing about this.
Got to do it.
So like all of that's interesting at the very least. And I also think that like the aesthetic of it is cool. Like the sort of bright blue sky combined with like zombies is like, that's interesting. That's kind of, novel.
Striking.
Yeah. I think that like zombie media definitely has a tendency to go just like so dark and spooky and depressing. And like, understandably, right? I think zombie movies and shit oftentimes are criticisms of how people act. And so it makes sense that like sometimes you would want to get kind of dark, A lot of the Dawn of the Dead and all that series, a lot of those movies are just like criticisms of capitalism, like go off king. But I think it makes sense for the aesthetic to match that. But in contrast, I think when it is bright and not chipper, but like when the sky is bright and it's daytime and shit, that offers you definitely a different vision of what that shit looks like, which is cool. I think like that's novel. And it's also contrasted though with like pretty gruesome shit. Yeah. Like they really don't hold back on sort of the gore of this game. And I'm sort of two minds of that stuff. On one hand, it's like, it is pretty intense. And like, sometimes you will get just like brutal amounts of viscera and like zombie body parts and shit that are like just strewn around a room and stuff.
Sure.
And I don't think it is ever engaging in the horror of that. Like it is usually pretty funny about it. And so you are just presented with these visuals, but also like your character doesn't really seem to be fazed by it at all. And the game doesn't really seem to put weight on the fact that like, hey, this used to be a person. It's just like, nah, dude, it's zombies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like, it's closer to like an Evil Dead or something like that, where aesthetic of just like this truly wild amount of blood and gore is supposed to be kind of funny. And like in something like Doom, that works really well because Doom is just so over the top. But also with Doom, it's demons, right? Like you are oftentimes confronted with like a demonic force rather than like a human. And so I think it does just like it plays a little bit differently in that case.
Yeah.
But you have kind of similar moves in this game where like if you parry someone essentially like a zombie, you can go in for like essentially a Doom level move where you just like bust someone's head open in a lot of ways.
Dang.
It's like, it's gruesome, but also again, I think it's supposed to be gruesome in the way that like the Evil Dead is, where it's like, you're supposed to be like, ew, gross, right? Rather than like, oh, the horror of the situation.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it necessarily lands that tone perfectly in the way that Doom does, right?
Sure.
Or in the way that the Evil Dead does. I'm not saying the Evil Dead is perfect. Like there's a lot of shit in that hasn't aged super well, but like the just sort of like brain explosions and shit like that.
Yeah.
It's fun or like any David Cronenberg movie that's just like grotesque intentionally, that it doesn't even necessarily seem to have a point. It's just like, or this game doesn't. I think Cronenberg usually does, but with this one, it's more like yucky, ew, but also like, isn't it fun to hit a zombie? But I think that could have been balanced a little bit better to make it funnier, because I think that's what they're going for, right? Is that this is silly and ridiculous, and you're just like a person using a golf club to like solve their zombie problems. But the tone is definitely like imbalanced in certain spots.
Gotcha.
It's a video game as video game, man. Like, it is so core video games. Like when I thought about what a video game was in like middle school, like this is that game.
Yeah.
Where like it is just smashing dudes and going from objective marker to objective marker. And now there's an armored zombie, and now there's a bigger zombie, and
don't think, just hit
the zombie, man.
Hit the zombie.
And so like I think my own appetite for those sort of games is definitely lower, but I'm also hard pressed to totally just write that genre off. I think that these mechanics they feel dated because we just saw so much of them. Like the current moment that we're in is sort of a response to these kinds of games that were just like quote unquote fun simulator. Like I don't want to endorse that by saying like,
yes, it's so much fun to fucking kill a zombie, dude.
But there's definitely an angle there, right? Like it was fun in 2011 for me. So like, I think, maybe that's age, but maybe that is just like exposure to this stuff of like, I've played a lot of Assassin's Creed, played a lot of zombie games, and like, how much more enjoyment can I get from cutting a zombie's head in half or something like that?
Truth.
But all that said, it's a pretty good podcast game. Like I can just like play it without really like needing to engage that hard. And I sort of like having games like that where I can just sort of like tune out a little bit and have some prompts to push a button. Or like with Dragon's Dogma 2, that is a bad podcast game. I can't listen to a podcast and play Dragon's Dogma 2 because I might miss like such critical information if I'm not paying attention enough.
Absolutely.
And so like, I don't know. It's not the same thing. So this comparison is going to sound buck wild, but like maybe closer to like a visual novel at this point of like the amount of interaction that this game requires physically is more than a visual novel for sure.
Yeah.
But like mentally is not particularly high.
You're doing more things with your fingers, but you're not doing much more with your brain.
Yes. Hey, who's the real zombie? I'm just here.
Ooh, maybe that's the real commentary.
Can you imagine if that was the fucking commentary that this game hit you with at the end of it? It's like
good, you got it, bro.
Yeah, like you've just been following your programming. I guess that's just Metal Gear, isn't it? That's why we like that game so much.
Feel free to do a hip hip and I will hooray you for getting it.
Can love truly bloom on the zombie battlefield?
It's actually Hideo Kojima designed this game.
And so like I am okay with games that don't demand a lot from me. I don't know, like I will almost certainly be more satisfied with my experience at the end of Dragon's Dogma 2 than I will with my experience at the end of Dead Island 2, if I get there. But I think that like a game like this has its merits and has its places. It's just like, how much of that can you stomach, or how much of that are you interested in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, a little bit. I'm still a little bit interested. There's definitely a 2011 part of my brain that's like, yeah, I'll hit some zombies. That'll be okay. Again, especially on Game Pass, where it's like, you just fire it up if you want to try it. Yeah, it's I don't mean to come off negative about this. I think like most of my own responses towards this genre, and I think a lot of people's responses are saturation and just not being interested in that anymore. I think that like, you know, games in the last 10 years have shown us that there are a lot of other stuff that we can put an emphasis on that will be more interesting. But this is, you know, I don't think that makes this bad. It just makes it sort of like dated in a way.
Is this how that mech game could be more interesting, Chase, if they put zombies in it?
Fuck yeah, dude. Put some zombies in the mech game. Let me blow their heads off with a mech, dude.
It's Dead Island, but farming.
Why not?
Farming and the zombie apocalypse. There you go.
I will say two of the other games that this company made, Dambuster, I think might put into context what kind of okay game this is. One of them is Homefront, the Revolution, that like, so I guess like Civil War game almost. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
It was very bizarre and like sort of harrowing in a certain way, but maybe perhaps a better example is Chorus, that the sort of like space combat game.
Hey, drifting in space is better than okay.
It's sick. No, that part of Chorus rocks. I'm definitely open to that. But they helped the company Fish Labs develop that. So
I can definitely see what you're talking about going just to objective marker without much interesting stuff happening in between, because that's kind of what got me off Chorus was, man, were the dogfights fun, but the stuff in between was not quite as good. It was not quite as good. Yeah.
Exactly. I sort of feel like that's one of the things that has really fallen out of or my own interest, I guess. Like here is the marker to go somewhere really sometimes kind of kicks my ass. Like it can really diminish my interest in doing something. And like, of course you're going to need some kind of marker, but like Elden Ring, I think is just like such a good example of this. Of somebody pointing.
Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild broke you too much.
Yeah, where they're just like, go to the castle that you can see, right? Like, that's like really fun and really interesting because it forces you to engage with the world in a certain sense. And even Dragon's Dogma, like you have map markers on the map, but oftentimes it's not that specific. It's not like, here is exactly where this person is going to be. It's like, there's an area over here that you should go to, right? And so the challenge is how to get there, how to navigate it, and then what do I actually do while I'm here? You know,
Sure.
I had a mission in Dragon's Dogma last night where it was like somebody's like kid got taken by a pack of wolves.
Oh man.
And I had to like talk to the villagers to be like, where do you think he went? And a bunch of them were like, oh, he used to go down to the like cemetery area and pick up flowers. And like, you know, he really liked them and he always carried them on him. So like, you know, you should maybe go look for that. And so you get to this area down there and there's no map marker. You just show up and it's like, hey, find him. And if you manage to go there at nighttime, you can see that the flowers glow in the dark.
Oh.
And there are some that are laid on the ground, right? So kind of start pulling on that thread. Eventually you'll figure it out. But like nothing said that. There was no markers that said like, here is exactly where you need to go. Mm-hmm. And so it's just forcing you to be like, I need to engage with this world slightly more than I am right now. And I think the games that are just like, here is exactly the NPC that you need to go talk to get more of the story is it takes away from that a little bit.
Is this a little bit of a segue into our game we're talking about today, Chase?
I guess that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't we do this? This will all bring me to my Podtimistic thing of the week, David.
Which is?
It's not a game this week, David.
What is it?
This week it's Crunchyroll.
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah.
Crunchyroll is great, though.
Having a good time with the Crunchyroll, man.
Crunching it up?
I'm crunching it up. I go through waves where I will just like not watch any anime for a long time, and then we'll be like, all right, I haven't watched anime in like a year or two. What's like the goodest good that's out there right now?
You got like 2 clips loaded right now, ready to go.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna be checking out that Frieren on
so good
on the plane and shit like that. So I was really excited to see that I could like download anime and just like watch it on my phone.
Great.
It's very cool.
You're gonna watch it on your phone?
I'm gonna watch it on my phone. Yeah.
What kind of heathen are you?
Yeah, man, that's fine. You know what's also fucked up? I'm definitely a dubs guy.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, to each their own. That's fine.
Yeah, it's like the like peasant peon version of watching anime where like I'm watching it on a tiny little screen with dubs, but like, I don't know. It's enjoyable for me.
If you are watching it on a small screen, you definitely shouldn't be using subtitles. You're not going to be able to see that shit.
And I unfortunately find that when I am reading subtitles, I'm usually just reading the subtitles rather than looking at what is happening on screen. And for like something where the art isn't that wild, I'm like, that's fine. Like I'll just peek up every now and then. But like for the stuff that's like really beautifully drawn, I really do want to have the chance to look at that. And for whatever reason, my brain can't both read English and absorb the visuals very well.
That's real.
So yeah, because like I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm gonna have the iPad with me. That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
So I might just be slamming episodes of Crunchyroll on my phone.
Get it, girl.
Get it, girl. Do you have something fuel your sense of optimism, David?
I do, Chase.
What is it?
And it is that mankind beat the machines, Chase.
Oh my God, yeah. In Helldivers 2, we beat the fucking automatons.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Oh my God, what is it?
But another thing to celebrate against the machines.
Yeah.
So Mario Maker has been completely beaten. They beat all the levels.
Wow.
There is like this community push to beat all the levels that have been made before the servers get taken offline.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There was one level, though, that was giving people fucking fits. And the person who made the level came out and said, yeah, I used a TAS to make this, which is a tool-assisted speedrun program, right? So ostensibly undoable. And yet humanity prevailed. Chase. Yeah. They still beat it. 3 days before shutdown, they beat this level that was made by a computer, which is absolutely amazing to me. That's just, that is just human spirit just saying, fuck you, I'm going to do it anyways. And I loved it. I love it so much.
That does rock. That's also wild. It lined up with us beating the automatons, dude.
There you go. Yeah. Who was it? Team 0% were like the group trying to do this. And it was Sanny X91 SMM2 who beat it.
Why?
Yeah.
That rocks.
Yeah.
Maybe AI is done now, dude. We delivered robots such a big blow that they're going to stop using their AI for us.
I mean, I'm just, what kind of, I mean, you're going to have to create a new acronym. It's going to be an AI assisted speed run, right?
Yeah, true.
It's going to be even more powerful, but there yet. They ain't there yet.
No.
People still number one.
That deserves, honestly, a hip hip hooray for this person.
Oh, who's going to hip hip? Who's going to hooray?
I think as society, we like the dude who beat this level will hip hip, and we as people will hooray.
Okay, so do we hooray together at some point?
I think you and I are just going to do a spiritual hooray, an emotional hooray. You know,
the spirit, the hooray equivalent of giving my energy to the spirit bomb.
Yeah, exactly. That's an emotional hooray.
It's an emotional hooray.
I feel the presence of Goku in this Applebee's.
In this Applebee's?
Have you seen that meme? It's
no.
I fear the presence. I feel the presence of Christ in this Applebee's.
Of Christ in this Applebee's. Yeah. I mean, that's not surprising.
He's present everywhere, man, including Applebee's.
It is probably the most Christian, fast casual chain of restaurant.
Dollaritas don't come from man. That comes from God.
Are they still $1?
They go through phases. You have to like find them on specific days. I think it's probably right that they like ration our supply of Dollaritas as a society, to be fair.
We only have $500 Dollaritas to give away this month.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to move on to our main thing, David?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Hey, welcome to Good Games. It's a segment where we talk about the okayest games of yesteryear and gush all the things that we love about them. We have another listener suggested game. This one comes from, they listed their real name in the title, but the name they gave us for the game suggestion was Creed, in parentheses, the band. So thank you to Scott Stapp, or whatever his name is.
Scott Stapp.
Stapp.
Stapp, right?
Something. Scott Stapp. Just 2 P's.
2 P's.
Thank you, Scott Stapp. Appreciate you listening to the podcast and apparently liking the video game, The Legend of Mana, which is what we're covering today.
A man of taste, truly.
Yeah. So here, hold on. Before we like jump into it, had you played any of the Legend of Mana games before?
I had not, no.
Or the Mana series at all?
No.
Yeah, I hadn't really either.
Blind spot for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think I had checked out The Secret of Mana at some point, the one for the SNES, but I didn't get very far in it. And then like there are a lot of games in this series.
There's a lot, yeah.
Just to like list a few, there's Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, Legend of Mana, which is this one, and then Sword of Mana, Children of Mana, Dawn of Mana, Heroes of Mana, Rise of Mana, Adventures of Mana.
Wow.
And then soon, Visions of Mana.
I was about to say, what's the most recent one?
There's one coming out this year in, well, supposedly Q2, Q3, which is Visions of Mana. But the most recent one is Echoes of Mana. And there was also the Trials of Mana remake that came out, I think, on Switch. It was actually on a handful of things.
Wow.
But there's a lot of games in this series. And like, I definitely feel like this is a blind spot for me.
Same. It's kind of a, I don't know, legendary is way of putting it, but a very like established video game franchise.
I think you hear people talk, like some people are like, this is the shit. Like this is the best shit. As far as video games, and like even if like you and I hadn't played it, I think either of us would have said like, I know those games. Like those are things I'm familiar with. So it's like there's definitely at least some exposure in the zeitgeist of like these are big games, despite the fact like most of them aren't reviewed perfectly. A lot of them are not reviewed all that amazingly. They're all pretty good, but none of them are like 10 out of 10, except for maybe Secret of Mana, which was reviewed pretty well. But like a lot of the rest of them are like good but weird games.
Yeah.
As far as like reviews go.
That's what most of the reviews said. Good but weird.
Good but also bizarre.
Yeah.
Except for maybe Dawn of Mana. That one was not reviewed particularly well.
Just weird.
Just maybe not so good. Before we get too far, David, can I hit you with some hot stats?
Please.
Hot stats.
So Legend of Mana came out June 6th of 2000 for the PS1. A really strange, I think, place for this to come out.
Yeah.
And also timing-wise was kind of strange. I think it had come out the previous year in Japan, but in North America it didn't come out until 2000. This is like right on the precipice of PS2.
Yeah.
Like we are so close to being on the PlayStation 2. And so like it's sort of this strange moment this game occupies. And it's also like looking at it, when I first heard of this game, I was like, oh, that must be like a Super Nintendo game or something, but it's on the PlayStation. Yeah. So like it's got this kind of like 2D look, which is sort of strange for where it ends up being. But, spoiler alert, god damn, does this game look good.
It sure does.
Fucking art in this game is outrageous. Yeah. But this was made by Squaresoft at the time, I think, which will help you, it will not help you at all with trying to narrow down what else this company has made, because they've made like every JRPG from the 90s. But there are some familiar people involved with it, which I thought might help. The director on this game is Koichi Ishii, who is like the Mana guy. Like he directed most of the series of Mana games. The Mana Man. But he directed Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, Legend of Mana. So the Mana.
Sorry, continue.
The designer on it was also Akihiko Matsui, who served as the director on Chrono Trigger. Goddamn. And then also worked as the combat designer for Final Fantasy 11 and 14. It's worth noting he was the combat designer on Final Fantasy 14, A Realm Reborn, meaning like the good version of Final Fantasy 14.
There you go.
Akitoshi Kawazu
Great.
was the producer, who's mostly worked on the Saga series. I was not as familiar with this series. But it's like another like RPG series that he's like all over. He's in a ton of these games as a producer. And then also helped out with producing on Final Fantasy 12. And then you have, of course, and I think that this one is kind of the biggest marker as far as style goes, is Yoko Shimomura herself, the goated music.
So good.
Arranger, musician on this game.
Composer.
That's the right word, David. Congratulations.
I got you.
I was not gonna get there. She also worked on. You might recognize her from every single Kingdom Hearts game, and then also for me personally, Parasite Eve, absolutely amazing. And then Super Mario RPG, she also made just hit after hit, man.
Real hit maker.
Yeah, holy shit. Let's see. I do have a review from the outlet Video Games. I think this one comes from Deutschland again. Their review was originally in German, and I took it through Google Translate a number of times, one language into another, to get a new artist interpretation of it, which I will read for you now, David.
Great.
Look, that's not going to happen to Fidel anytime soon. Different combinations of the attack engine in each movement contribute to the overall result. Yes, and in any case, you cannot explain about the graphics, as you can see in the screenshot. In this sense, we want to leave such pleasure, at least, to little to do with the, quote, pure power, unquote, of the polygon. So if you're ready to add a little bit more gamer play to the disc, you should give Legends of Man a try. And they give that 8 out of 10.
So their review was about Fidel?
Fidel was
Like
an interesting way to start
Castro?
that. That's my only assumption.
That's the only Fidel I know. Change that with a V, then we're talking about Dragon Ball. But
Ooh,
Fidel.
I do like that. Yeah, Fidel Castro, a known Squaresoft software enjoyer. Big Final Fantasy 9 head.
He turns up the blind eye to capitalism when it comes to JRPGs.
Yeah. Oh, God. David, could you explain to me what Legend of Mana is, to the best of your ability?
I was about to
There's so
say,
much shit
a
going
great
on.
question. Great question. So it is JRPG, a Japanese role-playing game. There are a couple different overworlds that you go through. You can go through a very detailed, smaller world where you're going through different exits and entrances and little square levels that take you to different areas to explore. Then that between those areas, it takes you to a larger world, or like city map, I guess I should say, area map. And then there's a world map beyond that you also engage with. So there's 3 different layers of areas that you kind of move in between. And then the combat itself there's no like cut scene where the battle music starts like in Final Fantasy and then takes you into like a different gameplay mechanic, right? Or area. It's just you are running along and then enemies jump out at you and you just pull out your weapon and you start going. It's very much more an action RPG. There are no turn takings going on here. So you have essentially an attack button, you have a guard button, you have a jump button, and you have a bunch of different special attacks that you can do, and you have a special meter that fills up the more attacks that you hit and land on your enemies. And the special attacks are actually pretty fun. They're pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own little flavor of special attack too, depending on which character they are. So that's how the combat plays out. And of course, at the end, you get loot and can go on to different parts of the level to find whatever is happening in this certain area that you have discovered. Each level is accessed via an artifact that you kind of plant into the largest overworld of the game map, and kind of sprouts up out of it. And they're very character dependent. So like each area kind of correlates to a different side character that you can pick up and bring into your party and explore this area with, which I thought was an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, I think the like narrative hook was that the world has been like taken apart in some way, like like some old destruction. I think it was the mana tree at some point got like fucked up, and it like kind of splintered the world. And so by placing these artifacts on the world map, you're like
reseeding the world.
Yeah, reassembling the world in some way. It's like, it seems like these places exist still, but that like you are somehow bringing them back together. Because usually people aren't like, holy shit, a new person, what is this? They seem to respond to you just fine.
Exactly.
And so it's almost like these places are there, but they're just not like present in the same way.
Pocket dimensions, probably.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much how the game plays out. Of course, you have the other tropes of a JRPG. You have items you can equip, different weapons you can equip. You choose like a weapon in the beginning. You choose a character in the beginning, man or woman. Very binary.
Extremely binary.
Very binary. Yeah. And then there's all sorts of little weird creatures throughout the world. There's like these talking cabbages that the first character that you kind of team up with fucking hates. He's like, these are the scourge of the earth. That's what he says
strange,
about them.
Yeah.
Like, really does not like them. The world is very confusing. It does not explain itself well. I've never played any of the other mana games. Maybe that'll be more explained, but I have no idea what like 80% of the creatures that I interact with actually are, which is also somewhat endearing as well.
Yeah, I'll say my feelings about this game like up front, which is that I think like 80% of it is really, really good and really cool.
Yeah.
But like one of the things I think you can levy against this game is that like the connective tissue is sort of not there a lot of the time.
As far as what's concerned.
Almost everything. The explanation of like, who are these people? What are these creatures? Why is the world like this?
Yeah.
What is my like goal as a player, you know?
But hey, and no way markers.
No waypoints, which like honestly does kind of work here because I think a lot of the point that the game is trying to make is that like you're supposed to explore this world, both in literally exploring it, but also like in the act of like creating it too. By like placing these artifacts on the ground. And so like, I think that the intent of the game is to make you feel like you are both explorer and author of this video game, that like it is offering you like essentially a bunch of these like side stories, right? Like whenever you finish a side quest, it sends like, you know, end of chapter essentially for, XYZ character.
Yeah. Say goodbye to Nicolo now.
Right. And so like, I think it is intentionally trying to give you a way to like imprint on the game. And I think other games would go on to maybe do this better, but it's like, that's a pretty ambitious thing to be trying in this genre at the time.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the stuff that you were saying that you like about Dragon's Dogma, I feel like this game kind of had that desire, but just couldn't do it. Maybe with the technical know-how of the time of just how video games were structured. Yeah. At that time, just wasn't there. It definitely wants to show you, not tell you about this world. But at the same time, the worlds do kind of feel a little sparse and a little hard to get around just with the limitations of the hardware of the time. So it adds a little bit of friction in that regard to getting that experience of I'm in this world and experiencing these things naturally as they come to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, I see the vision. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely there. And I think what they're trying to do, like when done right, really rocks, right? It reminds me, like, this isn't the same thing, but like the side quest in Breath of the Wild, the like Terrytown side quest where you like rebuild that city, very much reminds me of that in the same way where it is asking you to like, you are supposed to imprint on this place and leave your mark on it. And when they can combine that with like strong character writing is just so good when you're able to like care about a place.
Yeah.
And so like, I think that the goal that they're trying to hit here is actually really, really cool. You kind of see it too. It reminds me a little bit of the mechanics that we saw in like Dark Cloud, where when you go into the dungeon, you get those little like orbs that will allow you to like go back out into the main world and like put like a windmill down and like a guy that lives there. Yeah. Which I really liked in Dark Cloud. I think that that was like a really cool mechanic that they had and like really endeared me to the place and also asked me to be both like someone who experiences this place, but someone who is like an author of it in the same way. Dark Cloud also like isn't a perfect game, but like I do think that that approach like worked a little bit better there because oftentimes I'm just like, I'm grabbing the artifact and dropping it directly down onto the map and just being like, all right, what's in here? Rather than like, is there a reason for me to be placing it one place or another, or like,
is there?
I don't know. I didn't find one if there was.
Yeah.
I usually just plopped it right down onto the ground.
Is it okay for the jungle to be next to the highway? Are the beasts going to get to the people traveling on the roads? I don't know.
Are they going to get to I-5? Yeah. So like, I think I'm only levying this amount of criticism towards it because like the rest of it I think is so good. I'm so into the rest of this video game. Like the art is just like
so good.
Astounding how good it looks. I couldn't believe it booting it up that I was like, this is what the whole game looks like. Yeah. Because like you go out of the front yard and I'm like, this is just like gorgeous. It's like this kind of like hand drawn look to it. It just looks like some of the best pixel art you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's like kind of this like watercolor quality to it that is like, for me, almost indescribable, but like it is just every time I got to a new screen, I was like, I got to stare at this for a while.
Yeah.
Because it looks so good.
Yeah. It feels like if they took the concept art and like the character portrait art from like a Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles and just made a whole game with that aesthetic, which is awesome. I love it.
Sort of astounding. Yeah. Like my jaw was mostly on the floor whenever I got to a new area. Just incredible looking. So like
lush.
Yeah. In a way that I usually don't like, it doesn't usually hit me like that. You know, and especially in like a 2D game like this, I think, the first time I played Chrono Trigger or something, I was like, wow, this is a really cool looking game. But it's rare that from something that came out, 24 years ago for me to be like, wow, this is astounding how good this shit looks. Yeah. So just that was amazing. The combat is really interesting. I can't say it's like super deep, but it is like fun.
I enjoyed the combat.
Yeah. Like the connection to Kingdom Hearts is just so present for me. Like so much of this game feels like Kingdom Hearts to me. Yeah. Where, you can see the enemies sometimes on the overworld. It doesn't really launch into a battle. It's much more active in the way that it like hits. Even the little crystals that you have to pick up afterwards that turn into experience, like that's very Kingdom Hearts.
It feels very Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories.
Yeah. If Chain of Memories was like not a card battler, right? It was just like the action part of that game.
Exactly.
It's very strange. I think you can really see the connective tissue between like that era and then the next little bit. I think also this was just like a moment where Square was looking at like, what are we doing with these kind of games? Yeah. Because they had been making like turn-based RPGs for a while up to that point. I think you saw this like not splintering, but an experimentation, especially with Kingdom Hearts, but like as the Final Fantasy series went on and like the other games that Square was putting out at the time of like, does it need to be exactly turn-based all the time? Like, could we try other shit? And I think especially with the director of Chrono Trigger here, Chrono Trigger is turn-based. It's got that like ATB meter and shit, but it definitely had like enemies on the overworld rather than like random battles and shit like that. So you see the kind of melding of ideas between that game, this one, and then where Square would go on after this. Yeah. It's interesting. It's very cool.
Absolutely. It's a kind of like a little bit of a missing link game for Square in a way. It kind of bridges the gap between more of their action-oriented games and their turn-based games.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way of like, oh my God, I can't believe that this exists and has existed for a while. I'd love to read for you what Scott Stapp sent in about this game.
Wait, it's not just Scott Stapp, it's Creed, the band.
Yeah, so like Scott Phillips, he's in there, Brian Marshall, he's here too. Mark Tremonti, also here.
Definitely,
the whole gang's
definitely
here.
On brand for a band from the 90s and aughts to have two dudes named Scott in it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, doubling up on the
Sorry, Scots, but it was a common name back then.
It is, yeah. Creed the band had said, I first played this when I was a child and enjoyed it. I played it again when I started to learn emulation on PSP, and then I truly learned the depths of this game. Getting pets, making instruments to use as magic, which is awesome AF. A complicated and messy, truly the opposite of simple and clean. Nice. Forging and tempering of weapons, making golems and making logic blocks to program the AI of the golems. I remember this game when you were talking about Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and talked about Hyrule Engineers. I remember that I learned about the foraging and tempering this game through a Yahoo group named Legend of Mana Kitchen, which is awesome. This game can be deceivingly simple, which is why I was able to enjoy it from a younger age, but underneath its simplicity is a very mechanically in-depth game. Would recommend it playing it with a guide, which is definitely true.
Yes,
like the moment I opened up a guide, I was like, all right, what are we doing in here? That was like much more helpful. Yeah. Thank you for your words here about the game. And it is deceivingly simple. Like
I want to program a golem.
I know. Yeah, it's very
That
fun.
sounds
It's very
awesome.
cool. There's a lot of stuff in there. I think like the pet system that they have is very neat, and like the musicianship of it all is very cool.
Yeah.
The like blacksmithing stuff that you can do later in the game was really cool. And it's deceivingly simple in the sense that like it kind of feels like a straightforward action beat 'em up, but like there's so much other shit going on here. I feel like that was a strength of Square at the time, and especially when they focused on these straightforward, quote unquote straightforward games, like more action based games, was that they're like, we are so used to building these big complicated systems with our other RPGs.
Yeah.
That like, let's do some other shit too. Let's like have some fun with it. Which is just really awesome. There's like, equipment in this game, which is cool. You can like switch out all your weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
All of them attack and feel very different
They do.
than one another, which is really cool. So yeah, there is a lot of depth in this game, which I think is like it's very neat. We got to talk about the soundtrack, man. We got to get in there.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I got some stuff to show you. There are a lot of connections to a bunch of different soundtracks that Yoko Shimomura. I want to point out a few of them to you. Let's start.
It says like 7 bullet points on this screen right now.
I have so many links to show you, David. Let's start here. Okay, so this is Leading into Prosperity in Legend of Mana. Eagle-eyed listeners will know what's coming here. Let me play you now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This song from Kingdom Hearts.
Yep.
It's so similar. It rocks. Like I am not here to point out to you, oh my God, look at how similar these songs are. She's so uncreative. I'm more saying these songs fucking rock.
Yeah.
Like both of them work here. And I think that she just does such a good job of like adapting something that could sound very similar and making the vibe just like perfect. Because that second one sounds like Kingdom Hearts, and the first one sounds like a more fantasy-driven game, right?
Yeah.
Like a Legend of Mana game, right? Just the texture of the music is different enough.
Sure is. But man, is that Kingdom Heartsy.
It's so similar.
Yeah.
This other one I don't have a comparison for, but like, God, does this just sound like a Kingdom Hearts level? This is Southern City Polpata.
Oh yeah.
It's so Kingdom Heartsy.
Yep. It's a beautiful level as well.
I know, yeah. Just again, anytime there's a new screen, I'm like, whoa, dude. But this could be so many different levels in Kingdom Hearts.
It definitely could be. It could be it could be just like walking around music. It could be like overworld music. It could be, that wouldn't be battle music, but it's a lot of it could be a lot of different things.
Just amazing. I genuinely was like, oh my God, this is so good. The other comparison I want to show you, this one, of course, your boy had to pull in a Parasite Eve comparison here.
Gotta do it to him one time.
Had to do it to him one time. Here is Marginal Beast from Legend of Mana.
Great name.
I know, very good.
Good.
So we're good there. Got a little repeat. Let's go to, this is Plosive Attack from Parasite Eve.
Plosive. Oh yeah.
And again, like
works.
For anybody who hasn't played Parasite Eve, it's set in like modern at the time, but like 1999 or 1997, I think, New York City. And so like those are very dramatically different like spots for the game to be taking place in. And so I think like both of those tracks, you can see her different approaches to like, how am I going to adapt this to, you know, a different location, I guess. God, dude, they all hit even when they sound similar.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that was good.
Yeah. Some of like, I'm sure that there's other connections in there. And like, that's, I'm not here to say like, you know, this soundtrack is just like, you know, different versions of other shit, but more so like I saw connections here, and then just the rest of the soundtrack is an absolute banger. Like everything in there is just like astounding. It is so good.
Absolutely.
She has such a good way of making like kind of driving music.
Yeah.
Like it is really forward oriented. There is a lot of momentum in the stuff that she's writing, which is just, it's so good.
Yeah, pushes you forward for sure.
Really does. She has these like wild, like rhythmic parts to her songs. Like a lot of the rhythm and drums in there is like kind of not polyrhythmic, but they're not just like 4 on the floor or like ethereal. It's these kind of strange patterns going on in the background, but it all just somehow feels kind of like frantic and intense, despite the fact some of those songs are like very chipper and very nice. Dang. Yoko Shimomura, absolutely goated.
She's up there. She's up there.
Yeah. What else about this game? What else did you think about it?
I really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were silly and goofy and interesting. I loved how people and things moved. There was a very nice smoothness, and like when I just think about how to describe the game, how it looks and how it feels when you play it, it's like round, it's smooth, it just feels just nice to look at and move through. Because sometimes things are nice to look at, but they don't feel good to interact with. But this game also feels good to interact with and just interact through, like move through it. Especially the main character has a very nice cadence to how they walk.
Yeah, for sure.
Feels good.
Reminds me like of the like high quality shit that like Metal Slug usually brings whenever there's a game like that, where like the animation and the quality of the pixel art is just astounding. But they've also made how it feels to move also feel good. Yeah. Just amazing. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. And I think the exaggerated movements of people's bodies also reminds me a lot of, once again, Kingdom Hearts, especially the big feet. Big feet.
Yeah,
always
similar
Kingdom
character
Hearts.
designs.
It's just rings in my head. But I mean, it's a fun experience. It's one of those games where it's easy to grok the basics of the game to get through it, but then there's so much more underneath the hood that you can explore if you really want to. And I think that's a special thing in a game. There's not a lot of games that are able to pull that off. Yeah. And this seems like it's one of them, at least from what I've played so far.
The RPGs of this era sometimes can be a little tough to get into if like you're not really sure like which one is the first one that you want to do. I think the answer is probably like just play Dragon Quest, like play whatever Dragon Quest you can get your hands on that is more recent, because I think a lot of the basics of the genre are established in each one of those games. Like you will get like, I understand what magic and equipment is in an RPG now if you play one of those. But if you're thinking of just games made by Squaresoft, like you are sort of looking at like which Final Fantasy should I play, and like, you know, which of these mechanics make the most sense to try and engage with. But with this game, it does seem like it is intended for like a kid should be able to play this, right? And it definitely has a sort of like playfulness to how it wants you to engage with the world of like just experiment and put shit down and try to see like what strange world you can build with these like blocks of locations, which is cool. I think that it's cool to see them offer the depth. We'd sort of talked about this with Unicorn Overlord of like, there's a lot of depth there if you want it, but like you don't necessarily need it. Like there are ways to get around that if you're just, you know, trying to go the main route or trying to play the main story. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I like, again, I'm not trying to harp on it, but I do wish they had kind of nailed the like main thrust of the world a little bit more. Yeah. Like the main story, because I think that really would have pulled me along, because everything else was done really well, right? Like the main sort of like the initial story that you get hit with are like these people who are like maybe sort of robots that you're running into who like have these cores, right? Yeah. I was like, is this fucking near all of a sudden? Like this is very cool.
What is going on here? Yeah.
And like you can tell that there's a lot of heart and a lot of I don't know, there's just an interest in writing these really cool side stories that I think if you had some big, or not even big, but just like something going on in the background that was sort of drawing you along, that stuff would hit really hard. Again, I think Dragon Quest is a good example of that, where almost all of those are like, those games have these like episodes essentially where it's like each town, one thing will happen And then, sort of towards the end of that, it'll push you towards sort of the main plot that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But each one of them is kind of supposed to be taken as an episode almost,
Yeah.
like just one little instance that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And this game seems to have the like enough of those little stories going on, and they're written well enough that I'm like, I care about these people and like the places. And obviously, like, again, because you've made the world yourself, you're endeared to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was usually just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to be like driving towards?
A skosh more direction would be nice, right? They never had that instance of like what you were talking about with Dragons, talking about the glow in the dark flowers on the ground that shows you where to go.
Yeah.
Where it's not telling you, right? But it's still showing you through the world, like, oh, this is where I should go. This is what I should be doing. This is kind of, I'm on the right track here. It doesn't provide those very crucial markers for you that are not waypoints, right? But they are a visual marker of some sort that is built into the world that shows you where to go.
Yeah, because like even the overarching story of like the world has been shattered and you have to put that back together, like that's compelling.
Yeah,
there's
that's
good
awesome.
shit in there, right? I think games that ask you to like, help build this world again are always really interesting at the very least. I think that's why I was so interested in Dark Cloud. That's why the Terrytown shit just fucking rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. There have to be other games like that. I mean, to a larger degree, the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both are sort of asking you, like, not directly, but sort of indirectly, of like, hey, this world has been sort of broken. We want you to help us fix it. Essentially, that's really compelling. There's a lot of really strong storytelling opportunities there.
Yeah.
And this one seems to have some of them, but yeah, just like I said, I would have loved to see like, what is the thing that drove this? Why is the world like this? Or like, what is the thing that is standing in our way? Why don't people want the world to be like reunited in a way?
Yeah. And in a way, it almost seems like if Octopath had just 8 different stories that did not connect to each other in some way.
That was one of the criticisms levied at the first one, was that they weren't really like involved with each other. And that's why I think some people were like 2 is really like the good one here, because they are, if not directly connected, the world is connected.
Yeah.
And so you get all this kind of like cross-pollination with the people and the places and shit like that.
That's cool.
Death Stranding is this. It is reconnecting the world. And like, what does that mean, right? Like, is there narrative shit going on there? Of course, like Death Stranding, a lot of shit is going on. And so I think that like you see similar goals with both of these games of like how to rebuild this place and like, what does that look like? But, didn't hit exactly the mark, but that's also like, again, like I said, I'm only being critical of it because I'm like, you're so close.
There's a lot of potential there. Yeah.
There's so much potential. The rest of this game is so good and so much fun.
Chase is that hard teacher in school. I'm hard on you because I care.
And like, let me be clear with the giving flowers part. This game is very good. I like had a great time playing it.
It's a fun game. It still holds up today.
It really does. It's still very fun. It feels great to play. I'm like very much considering, there's like a remake on Switch that I want to check out. Like, again, you do lose some of the like charm of the PS1 era pixel art. It's like much more clear, like the just the art style of it, which kind of a preference choice at that point.
Yeah.
I sort of like the look of the old one, but like it is compelling to maybe have that on Switch too.
Chase, you're not going to have any time on this flight at this point, Chase. You're going to have to like make a schedule for your flight. Like, all right, for the first hour I'm doing this, second hour I'm doing this, 15-minute break. Keep on going.
It's those like goofy memes of like right ear is Mozart and left ear is just like how to learn Mandarin. Shit like that.
There you go.
I'm listening to Frieren in my left ear and playing Persona 5 in my right.
You got to bring 2 sets of AirPods.
This is like so content brain broken, but there are times where I will put in my earphones to my Switch with like the tiny earbuds and then put the noise canceling ones over it so I can listen to a podcast while I play a video game.
Oh my goodness. How does your brain even process that?
It's just podcasts and video games, baby. I do that at home all the time.
Give me all the information.
I need it all.
It's a lot of information. But hey, more power to you.
Anyway, Legend of Mana, I think this was like very good. Like you were saying, the missing link for me in a lot of cases because I like a lot of other shit from this era. It's interesting to play this one. It was cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Scott Stapp, for your suggestion.
Scott Stapp and the rest of Creed.
Scott Stapp and two other Brians and another Scott. There were two Brians.
There were two Brians? Brian, Scott?
There was, short-lived in 1994, there was a Brian Brasher who played guitar for Creed. And then the bassist in Creed is named Brian Marshall. So for a moment, there were two Brians and two Scotts and one Mark.
2S2B.
2S2B. That's my favorite character in Nier Automata. Are the combined collective consciousness of Creed.
It's the Nier Automata and Fast and the Furious crossover.
2S2B.
Yeah.
Hip hip, hip hip hooray,
hip,
baby.
Hip hooray.
Hello, gamers. It's me, Chase, and this is the outro.
See ya.
See ya. We should do that at some point. It's not this day, but we should do that sometime.
Yeah.
If you want to interact with us on the internet, you can go to podtimism.com. There's links to our Discord. We are part of a network of podcasts, and you can come hang out in there. It's called The Worst Garbage. There's other podcasts on it, like Can't Let It Go and Into the Aether and Frog of the Week. And some other stuff coming soon. I'm not going to say any more.
Cool.
But there's cool stuff on the horizon. But yeah, you can go and get links to the Discord and talk and hang. It's fun. It's a good time. If you want to help out the show, you can leave a review on a podcatcher somewhere. I feel like most of them for us come through Spotify. It's definitely easier. Spotify, it's just like, what do you think? Whereas like Apple's like, hey, what's your credit score? And like, what's your dad's middle name? If you want to, it like really requires you to like get in there and like sign into a lot of things. And like, you can't just leave like a numerical review, or you used to not. I think you can now, but you used to be able to you used to have to write a review.
Wow.
Which is like kind of a lot.
Tim Apple is very demanding.
I know, man. It's okay. Just let me say how good it is via numbers. Anyway, that definitely helps it out, but also like showing it to a buddy and saying, hey, do you like 2S2B, my favorite band from 1994? And The Legend of Mana? Well, have I got a pod for you?
I got it all.
Yeah. Then you can show it with people. It's definitely the easiest way to grow, or I should say the most effective, because the algorithm has its faults, as we've all found out at this point.
It sure does.
And but like a personal human recommendation, that shit's valuable and good. Let's see. Thank you, Scott Wilkinson, for your art on this podcast. It rocks, and I like to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
We already said thank you to The Worst Garbage, so I think that just means thank you, listener, for listening. Very happy to have you here as we approach 200 eps.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's very, very flattering and very cool. And I hope you don't mind that we won't be back here until the 5th.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
I hope that's the case. I hope absence doesn't make the listens go down. It might make the
they're gonna be like, forget these jokers,
dude. 2 weeks? What the fuck? What am I supposed to do?
Well, I think it's supposed to be somewhat of a special episode when we come back, isn't it? Isn't that what we decided? We will see. Well, okay,
not committing to anything.
All right.
I will be 16 hours difference of jet lagged, so I may just like sort of buzz into the microphone for a couple hours, just sort of hum for a while.
Go to Japan and become a bee.
I'm going to finally become a bee. I dropped the B from my name so that I could become a bee in real life.
All that talk of the Black Eyed Peas recently, Chase is like, I am a bee. You're right.
I am a bee. I'm a bee.
CNHBs, so anyway.
Baby. Shout out Kiwanis.
Shout out Key Club, Cali Nebha District.
Oh my God, David. Jesus. Your ability to pull out a phrase that I haven't heard for 15 years is so wild sometimes.
Do we need to do the rap?
Absolutely not. We'll be here for another 10 years.
It's not that long.
I think we've done it in this podcast before.
I think we have.
Pretty sure
I think we have. Real podheads have already heard it.
David, do you have any gaming wisdom for us this week?
Doing stuff that you love and enjoy is great.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's also good to take a break from that every once in a while. And just let yourself live a little bit.
That's us. Is that us?
That's us right now.
Take our own advice, you know?
Just say it. This is a great podcast, but it's also nice to take a little break now and then.
That is true. We're going to come back so ready for video games. I'm like, honestly, a little bit worried.
It might be a double. It might be a double issue.
Yeah. Yeah. We like start recording the moment I step foot back in America.
Yeah. I'm going to have a lot of games to talk about for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like if I start Dragon's Dogma between now and then, ooh. It's
gonna be
ogre,
nuts.
baby.
It's ogre. Yeah. Anyway, gamers, we will see you in 2 weeks from today, maybe, depending on when you're listening to this.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the future.
Oh.
And at which point we won't see you in 2 weeks.
I mean, I guess we are talking to the future right now.
yeah.
So they are in the future. Always.
2S,
right?
2B.
2S, 2B. I will be in the future compared to you next week.
2S, 2B. Hip, hip, hooree.
Hooree. 2 science, 2...
Bryant's.
2 science? Did you say Bryant's? Like science and Brian mixed together?
I think so.
I don't... Please, sir, I don't do science. I do Bryant's.
I do Bryant's.
My name is Brian. I do Bryant's.
That's a different thing.
It's science solely pertaining to Brian's.
You have to go to Brawlage for that one. It's a different place.
Brawlage. Oh, no. Wow. Did they just play Super Smash Brothers Brawl? Is that what it is? Or is it like a physical
man.
brawl?
I think if that's the qualification for Brawlage, I did go to Brawlage. I think I have a 4-year degree from Brawlage for sure.
Yeah, I think I have a unofficial degree from Brawlage. I like did the
An honorary degree.
an honorary degree from Brawlage. Yeah, I just took the enough units just to pass. That's it. I didn't major in anything. I just did enough to go. I was there.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Congrats on your degree.
Thank you.
Anyway, hip hip hooray. Goodbye.
Bye.
TWG, the worst garbage. Online.